It may not have been as pretty as many expected, but the Kansas City Chiefs start off week 6 of the NFL season with a 19-8 win over the Denver Broncos. That and more coming up right now on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, football fans, to the Friday episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering the National Football League, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this podcast. We are your Friday hosts, Tony Wiggins and David Harrison. You can also find us on Twitter at ShopTalkWig. That's 2 G's on Wig, and at DHarrison82. Part of the Locked On NFL host crew, here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers and everydayers. As always, we greatly appreciate you continuing to come through for the show. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. On today's episode, we're going to dive into the remaining games on the NFL schedule for week 6, and we're going to pick our favorites and tell you who we think are going to win each and every matchup. But first, Wig, Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Denver Broncos 19-8 in Kansas City. They advanced to 5-1 while the Broncos fall to 1-5. I think just about everybody other than your most diehard Broncos fans picked the Kansas City Chiefs to win. And I know there's some diehard Broncos fans that also picked the Kansas City Chiefs to win this game. But despite 300 yards passing from Patrick Mahomes, 124 yards receiving by Travis Kelce, maybe not as dominant of a performance by the Chiefs, or was it a dominant performance in your opinion?
Defensively, it was. I mean, they had Russell Wilson looking like a Pop Warner quarterback for most of the night, getting balls batted down, trying to run and direct traffic. And I think at some point in the fourth quarter, he only had 50 yards passing. So defensively, they look good. Offensively, you hate to criticize Andy Reid. You hate to criticize Patrick Mahomes because of everything that they've accomplished. But they deserve the criticism because they look out of sorts. And it's one thing to be able to play off schedule. It's another thing to have to play off schedule because you can't play on schedule. So their passing game is all kinds of ugly right now. But what do they say in the NFL? A win is a win, right? Because they're so hard to come by. If you get it, you get it, and you move on to the next week.
No, 100%. And, Travis Kelce coming in Thursday night, I mean, he had that ankle that he got rolled up, in the previous week. Now he got through this game, 9 targets, 9 catches, 125 yards, no touchdowns, which is unfortunate for my PrizePicks ticket. Right, unfortunately, that kept me from winning the big jackpot. Still won a little bit, but I didn't get the 500 that I was after because he didn't find the end zone. And then you saw late in the game, he actually came up hobbled a little bit. So now he'll get the pseudo bye that we always talk about coming out of Thursday Night Football, and the Chiefs will probably appreciate that, get a chance to kind of clean up some things. And I think that's, to your point, Patrick Mahomes throws an interception in the red zone. That's potential points that are now not on the board. And, you get away with it against the Denver Broncos, but you may not get away with it for some other teams. And to your point, defensively, they come up with 4 sacks on still what is one of the more better, I don't want to say better necessarily, but he's still one of the more mobile quarterbacks in the league, Russell Wilson. And then, he finishes 13 for 22, 95 yards passing. Javonte Williams had 10 carries and only finished about 40 yards shy of total offensive production compared to what Russell Wilson did. There are some problems in Denver wing. I think that's the next part of this conversation because the trade deadline is coming. Mm-hmm. The Broncos wear orange. Halloween is the orange holiday. And usually on Halloween, the orange coincides with giving stuff away. Are the Denver Broncos in a position, in your opinion, that they need to start selling pieces for future capital?
I think they are. Too bad they can't sell their quarterback because they probably need to get rid of him too. But it's a double-edged sword with that because you're getting more pieces to potentially make more bad decisions and bad mistakes in the future. So you need to fix who's making those choices also. But they look lifeless. They just look like a team they didn't care. Except defensively. You didn't really see them rallying around their quarterback. Russell's a robot, man. And I'm sitting there, I'm telling my wife, and I'm like, the very thing, watching him is something, it's something really, really, it almost, they always do a think piece on it because the very thing that got him to be who he is with that, the kissing the babies and just keep working and always throwing the ball on the sideline and looking the part and doing what's right. People are sick of that now because they realize, we need you to play. We need you to be the quarterback and the leader of this team. And it's almost as if his teammates walk by him and just give him the side eye. Like, look at this dude. It's like a caricature of what Mr. Corporate America quarterback's supposed to be like. But now he can't shake it when he needs to shake it and just ingratiate himself back with his teammates. It looks terrible. They just don't look like they have any life in them.
No, you're 100% correct. And for those out there who are screaming for the Denver Broncos to trade Russell Wilson, easier said than done. $107 million dead cap figure if they trade him this year. So, I mean, you kind of go back to like the Jay Cutler trade. I think it was when Jay Cutler was traded from the Bears. Basically, the Bears had to send Jay Cutler and draft picks to the team that took Jay Cutler. I can't remember who it was, in order to get rid of him because the contract was so prohibitive. And, we've seen some trades more recently. The Washington Commanders, when they traded for Carson Wentz, they took all the guarantees with them. So the Indianapolis Colts actually absorbed zero dead money. But you are not going to get an NFL team to take on Russell Wilson's contract and give you things, draft capital in return. No. If you try to get rid of Russell Wilson, you're sending draft capital with him, and he's about to turn 35. So I don't even know. I mean, that's about as prohibitive a trade as there can be. But people are talking about guys like Jerry Jeudy. Like maybe you trade Jerry Jeudy for draft picks, young receiver, send him out there, get some draft picks, maybe draft a whole new offensive line or something. Garrett Bowles, the offensive tackle for the Broncos, went on record a couple weeks ago, said, I've been here for 7 years. I've done nothing but lose. And so maybe he's getting frustrated. But Jerry Jeudy, did you see Wig before the game? Steve Smith has been saying some things about Jerry Jeudy. I guess called him a jag, which is just a guy, right? Mm-hmm. Is what he means. That Jerry Jeudy took exception to it. Basically told Steve he was going to show him. He was going to show everybody. 3 catches, 14 yards.
Yeah. First of all, Jeudy has to watch himself because part of the reason you're just a guy is because they've only had just a guy throwing you the ball since you've been in the NFL. And if Sean Payton says your other coach was terrible and Sean Payton also happens to be terrible, so now you've had bad quarterbacks throwing you the ball under the direction of bad coaches. So we have to be careful when we talk about guys, unless you can show me on film where Jerry Jeudy drops balls or where Jerry Jeudy doesn't finish his routes. It doesn't run through his routes. Unless you can show me where he's not coming to practice. We don't get to just sit behind a microphone and criticize everything, including the things that would actually contribute to that young man being a good player. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to take a swing at him too. Nah, these dudes going to start swinging back. And that's the thing, verbally. And I don't have a problem with it because what was Steve Smith Sr. had done, he would have swung back too. He would have said something verbally. So, be careful when you want to take the barbershop. And I know this because this is what I do for a living. Be careful taking the barbershop to the microphone because the thing about the microphone is this. It doesn't show you the whole thing that goes on in the barbershop. They are taking the most incendiary statements and activity that we talk about behind closed doors, and they're bringing it in front of these microphones. And it's going to, and Steve Smith in the next segment had to defend himself by talking about not making a business decision so that he doesn't embarrass his family. Just imagine that you're doing your job, and because of a part of what you did, you're one step away on national TV in front of the whole country. You have to sit there and make a business decision not to fight somebody. That means you probably shouldn't be in that situation in the first place, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would agree. Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton's another guy. Like, they kind of remind me of Allen Robinson. I know you're familiar with Allen Robinson, of a guy who's got really good talent, but the production isn't matching his talent because the talent around him maybe not necessarily facilitating the best usage of his talent. But we're going to see what the Denver Broncos decide to do. Sean Payton said earlier in the week, they answer the phone because that's what you do. You answer the phone. You always answer the phone, but they're not looking to actively shop anybody. At 1-5 now, I don't know, man. Maybe it might be time to start seeing if you can wheel and deal and maybe set things up for the future. But speaking of the future, we got more games coming up on Sunday. We got a game coming up on Monday, and Wig and I are going to take our best shot at telling you who's going to win and why coming up next on today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, I got to let you guys know about Jase Medical, man. And I got to tell you a story about once when I went to Ohio and did not understand the weather and did not understand the pollen. I broke out. I mean, I looked like Will Smith in that movie Hitch, man. I was all swollen up. And then up in Cleveland, The drugstore is closed. They closed. So if I'd have had a Jase Medical in my life back then, I wouldn't have had these problems. Because what Jase Medical does is give you a Jase case. It provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes is to get a Jase case is to fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of our board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from our physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor created, doctor recommended. Now, here's what you have to do, man. Make sure you listen very carefully. Get $20 off on these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com.
Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On NFL your first listen today and every day. Everydayers, thanks again for coming through on a consistent basis like you do. Football season is here, and Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On NFL Kickoff Live. Each Friday, Locked On will go live at 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On NFL YouTube channel, and your hosts are going to break down every game on the NFL schedule to get you ready for your team's matchup, your fantasy lineups, your betting angles, and more. Plus, get the in-depth local analysis from our stable of NFL hosts like Tony and I from time to time across the country who know these teams better than anyone else. Find Locked On NFL Kickoff Live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on any Locked On NFL YouTube channel, including Locked On Jags, Locked On Commanders, Locked On Bucks. That's where Tony Wiggins and I are found when we are not here with you on Fridays, Locked On NFL. But we are here today, Tony, so we got to get into some games. The Kansas City Chiefs, they've already won. They're 5-1. They get to take a knee. They get to watch some football with their families or not watch some football with their families, whatever they decide to do. But the Baltimore Ravens are going to be playing football on Sunday, 9:31 in the morning Eastern time, because they are overseas facing the Tennessee Titans. The Baltimore Ravens favored by 4. They're technically on the road, but I mean, they're both on the road, right? So over under 41.5. Wig, did the Baltimore Ravens get back in the winning column this weekend?
I think they should. And I think Lamar Jackson is the difference. And, you know, I know he had some up and down games so far this year, but I just think he's going to be a big difference in a game like that. You see those two teams get on the field, you know what it's about to be. They're about to get in the phone booth and about to slug it out and hit each other with elbows. Well, who's got that one dude that can make a difference? Derrick Henry can make a difference, but he kind of is the elbow slinger, right? I just think the guy that can make plays, that can make plays above the X's and O's and make one more play is going to be Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, I'm expecting a very physical competition, but I do think the Baltimore Ravens are going to come away with a win. That's going to be a long flight home, carrying a dub with them, and unfortunately, the Titans are going to have to carry that L as well. Really big spread going on in Cleveland. The Cleveland Browns, Sunday afternoon, 1:01 p.m. Eastern time, are home underdogs by 9.5 points, and everybody's wondering what is going on with Deshaun Watson. If that's not a question that we've asked multiple times over the last 3 or 4 years, I don't know what is. San Francisco 49ers, 9.5 point spread. Wig, are you taking I think you're taking the Niners, right? But are you taking the Niners with the 9.5 point spread?
I am absolutely taking the Niners with the 9.5 point spread because they're clicking on all cylinders on offense and defense. And like you said, what is going on with Deshaun Watson? Deshaun Watson, this can't do about as bad a job as messaging as anybody I've ever seen. You know, this would be the time where you'd be transparent if something was going on with you that could make people, if people were going to have a little bit of sympathy for you, but just be kind of quiet and coy about the whole thing. No, I think people are hoping that San Francisco stomps a mud hole in them, and they probably will.
I have to agree with you, man. I have nothing to disagree with anything that you just said there. I'm taking the Niners. If I want to, I tend to be conservative, so I might go money line anyway. But if I want to go a little bit bolder, I'm taking them with the points as well. The team that I cover primarily, the Washington Commanders, they're 2.5 point underdogs on the road in Atlanta this weekend. Unfortunately, I won't be there. But Wig, I'll tell you right now, I'll give you my opinion first. And obviously, I've got a lot of episodes talking about this matchup. But I think the Commanders have the roster to beat the Falcons. I think roster on paper, the Commanders look better. But we all know games aren't played on paper. And the way the Commanders have been playing on the field, I'm concerned about the Falcons. So I still think the Commanders can win. I'm just not sure they will win. What do you think is going to happen?
I agree with you. I think Atlanta's going to pull it off. And I'm really perplexed that maybe somebody on the sideline, be enemy or somebody, needs to tell Sam Howell who Terry McLaurin is and just say, make sure you understand who he is and what he is. Until you find your best players, man, you're going to keep finding the L column. And I think you talk about a candidate for getting run out of a job. I think Ron Rivera is real close.
I'll tell you right now, there are some Commanders fans that are already trying to run him out of that seat. So we'll see if they lose in Atlanta, things might get a little bit uglier. I mean, Atlanta's coming in 3-2, so they're not exactly, a losing team right now, but it doesn't matter. You lose 4 in a row after winning 2 in a row. We'll see how things go down, but that could get really ugly. Speaking of ugly, we already talked about big home spreads for the home team being the underdog. The Miami Dolphins are at home for this one, and they are 13.5-point favorites. Is there any way, Wig, that the Carolina Panthers win this game?
Yeah, with a baseball bat, but that's not going to be allowed. You know what I'm saying? You can't go out there with that. No way. I just think this is going to be the only way this game is any closer than 20 points is if they feel sorry for them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at Tyreek Hill on the other side of your fantasy football matchup this week, you are terrified of what's going to happen in Miami this weekend. Fortunately for me, I'm the guy with Tyreek Hill. I'm not the guy looking at Tyreek Hill, so I get to benefit there. Minnesota Vikings, Chicago Bears. I think when we come into the season, a lot of people expected this to be a 3-point margin of victory, but they expected the Vikings and Bears to be sitting atop the NFC North, maybe fighting for first place. Right now, Wig, it's a 3-point margin. The Vikings are the favorites in Chicago, but they're fighting for last place. Which of these two struggling teams is going to get their second win of the season?
2 weeks ago, I would have told you that Minnesota was going to win. Today, I think the Bears are going to win the game because they have been playing a little bit better. And then Minnesota might be one of those teams, too. We talk Denver and Minnesota are the two teams that's most mentioned when you talk about selling off parts at this point. So I think Chicago has a little bit of momentum, and I think they're going to keep going.
Yeah, let me ask you a bold prediction. If the Minnesota Vikings lose this game, do they trade Kirk Cousins?
They should. They should. And I don't know where he's going to go, but I would have to really go through the league and really think about it. Maybe go to the Patriots or somewhere like that has the cap space, or even with the New York Jets. But I think it would be time for them to move on.
Yeah, somebody told me there was a rumor, and I think it was more speculation than actual rumor, that maybe the Vikings and Cowboys orchestrate a trade where Cousins and Dak Prescott switch spots. I would be incredibly shocked to see that happen. Indianapolis Colts on the road, 4.5-point dogs to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Tony, you're fairly familiar with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Locked On Jags host. Tell us how this thing's going to go down, man.
I think it's going to be a really good game for the Jaguars offense. They found a little bit of rhythm last week. They seem to always beat the Colts down here, and even when they weren't the favorites, now they're the favorites, and they have to win games that they're supposed to win. They're facing Gardner Minshew, someone who everyone around here is familiar with, but I think Jacksonville is going to go ahead and try to make a push these next 3 games before they get into the meat of their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be playing with a lot of confidence after what they did last weekend, right? So I think I take the Jags in that one as well. New Orleans Saints were expected to be atop the NFC South this season. Depending on who you talk to, how great of an achievement that would have been. But after losing the Buccaneers, they're no longer in that number 1 spot. The Houston Texans have surprised a lot of people. The Saints are favorites to win in Houston, but it's a 1.5-point spread, Wig. Do you think that this has more to do with the Saints' struggles or the Texans surprising people and being better than they thought?
I think it has more to do with the Saints because I thought they would look better. And I thought Derek Carr would look like the good version of Derek Carr, but he's sort of looked like the bad version of Derek Carr, right? Where he hasn't been making a bunch of mistakes, but he just hasn't been making plays. I think Houston is going to continue to make strides, and then reality is going to hit them, and they'll step back a little bit. So I think they're in a little bit of a step back stage, and I think New Orleans will pull it out.
Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons were able to eke out a last-minute win over the Houston Texans. I think the New Orleans Saints make it back-to-back NFC South opponents to do the same to the Texans. The Saints win that game. The Seattle Seahawks on the road to face the Cincinnati Bengals. Is Joe Burrow back, Wig? Because they've got a 2.5-point favorite spread here to wrap up the early afternoon games.
He is back. They still have to be careful because the kind of team that can give them problems is the one that they're facing. And that is they got a bunch of second-level guys who are quick and fast, and Joe Burrow can get away from some people, but Bobby Wagner and that crew, they can run. So he has to be real, real careful to not get himself banged up because Seattle is a very, very physical team. But I think the Bengals will pull it off.
Yeah, I would take the Bengals money line, but that's going to be a very interesting one to watch as well, I think as well. And the Seahawks could certainly pull that one off. All right, that's the early afternoon games and the morning game for week 6. We've got the late afternoon games. And then, of course, we got to get to Sunday night and Monday night coming up next on Locked On NFL.
Let me tell you about PrizePicks, man. It is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. We are the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Now, Had I not had Patrick Mahomes accounting for more than 2.5 scores, I would have won my ticket tonight. But that's all right. We live to see another day, and you can do the same thing. Make sure you go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. I repeat that. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL, all one word in lower caps, and use lower cap Locked On NFL for a first deposit match up to $100.
All right, folks, wrapping up today's Friday episode of Locked On NFL. We've gone over the Thursday night win by the Kansas City Chiefs over the Denver Broncos, talked about the early Sunday games. Let's talk about the afternoon Sunday games, Wig, and then we'll get into Sunday night and Monday night, kicking it off with the New England Patriots visiting the Las Vegas Raiders, the Josh McDaniel revenge game, if you want to call it that. I don't know. I don't even know if Patriots and Raiders fans want to watch this game at this point, but the Raiders are 2.5-point favorites. Who do you think is going to win this thing?
I'm going to go with the Patriots, man, because I just really think Josh McDaniels has no clue of what he's doing. And I'd much rather than watch the football game, just watch McDaniels and Belichick just sit there and stare at each other just to see who will break first. I think that'll probably be more fun. But, yeah, we'll go ahead and go with the Patriots this week.
Yeah, I can see why you're going there. I'm going to go Raiders, but I mean, again, this is a game where it's like which of these two bad teams is going to be the least bad. Fortunately, you've got another option if you want it, and that's two first-place teams, the leaders in the NFC North, the leaders in the NFC South, Detroit Lions, 3-point favorites visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, bringing out the creamsicles. This is an old NFC Central matchup, the black and blue division. I mean, who do you think comes out of that one, Baker Mayfield or Jared Goff?
We're going with Jared Goff, man, but I got to be honest, Baker Mayfield and Tampa is one of my bigger surprises of the season. Now, on the Wednesday edition, James Rapine will tell you I was all against Tampa. I thought they were almost just as bad as Arizona, and I'm here to admit I was absolutely wrong. But I do think Dan Campbell and his crew, they're on to something. I think Detroit's going to win, and they're going to continue to bite at people's kneecaps.
Yeah, man. Hey, look, the one game that the Buccaneers have lost this season came to the Philadelphia Eagles. That was a very physical competition, and the Eagles out-physicaled the Buccaneers. The Detroit Lions are a very physical team as well, so there's some concerns there. I'm going to lean Buccaneers on this one because I'm going to trust that Dave Canales, that Todd Bowles, they've got their team more prepared for this knockout, slug-out fest that they're about to walk into than they did against the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm going to lean Buccaneers, but that is a game that I'm really excited to be able to watch. Next game, we got the Arizona Cardinals, Los Angeles Rams, one team that recently won a Super Bowl, another team that is just searching for answers all over the organization, from the ownership on down. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals will get you filled in. But the Rams are 7-point favorites, Wig. Do you think they come out of this with a win?
I do, but I'll have to give kudos to Arizona, too. They play hard, man. Yeah, and they have already made some changes in their front office and their coaching staff. And it is reflective very, very quickly in how they play. So I know they got a whole bunch of stuff they're dealing with now about their owner and all of that stuff. But no, I'm a firm believer in what we see right now is what it is today. And I don't think they're going to win this game. No way in hell they win this game Sunday.
Yeah, but you're right, man. Hat tip to the Arizona Cardinals players, man. That roster, that coaching staff, they're working their butts off. So hat tip to them because that's hard to do in that environment. But I, too, think that the Rams are going to win that game. The Philadelphia Eagles, 7-point road favorites to beat Zach Wilson and the New York Jets. Do you think the gang green can pull off the upset?
Only because Philly's the type of team that they're just going to go mano a mano with you. They ain't going to try to trick you and run a bunch of misdirection. So I think it'll be close and it'll be physical because the Jets can play that way also. And Zach Wilson has improved, but I think he's going to fall short, and I think Philly's going to win the game.
Yeah, I think Philly's going to come there. I don't know if I love that spread. I don't know if I love the 7 points. I might go money line on that one for the Eagles, but I do think the Eagles come away with this. And we got 14.5-point spread here, Wig. The New York Giants are going to play football in New York this weekend because they're visiting the Buffalo Bills. The Bills favored by 14.5. And yes, I'm one of those guys that says that New York only has one football team, and it is the Buffalo Bills. I don't know if you like it or not, but 14.5 points. Wig, you taking the spread on that one, or are you going money line on the Bills?
I'm gonna have to go money line only because I know there's probably some people up there that still love Brian Daboll, so they'll probably be up and give them some gimmies at the end, and a couple of points when they and maybe take the gas off, take the foot off the pedal a little bit. They ain't gonna embarrass their guy like that. So yeah, I agree with you. Though it's going to be a blowout, but I don't think they're gonna put it to him like that.
Potentially a gentleman's win, right? Maybe they'll only win by 10. A gentleman's 10. That's your Sunday night matchup. So if you want to watch football Sunday night, that's all you got. That's all you got. Yeah. Giants, Bills. Hey, you never know what could happen. Once Carrie Underwood is done singing, you never know what might happen. Monday night, I think this is a good matchup. This is a good way to end it. The Kellen Moore revenge game. Kellen Moore, former Cowboys offensive coordinator, now with the Chargers, welcomes his old team into his new home. 2.5-point underdogs, though, the Chargers are, to the visiting Dallas Cowboys. Is this Mike McCarthy win or a Kellen Moore win for you?
I'm going to go with Mike McCarthy. I think they got embarrassed last week in the state of California, and they don't want to do that again. I think they're going to be able to put it together. And then to be able to win a game, you can be outplayed by the Chargers, and because Brendan Staley's their coach, you can still beat them. So, we've seen that over and over again. So we're going to go with Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys.
That is fully fair. I'll tell you right now, if Austin Eckler is on any kind of pitch count, or because he says he's coming back. He says he's coming back for Monday night. If that's the case and he's full go, then I'm going Chargers. But if he's limited in any way, shape, or form, I'm going Cowboys. That's how important I think Austin Eckler is to this game. So those are your picks for Week 6. Wig, we'll see how successful we are. Hopefully, we're more successful than the Denver Broncos. Hopefully, I am more successful than the Washington Commanders have been in recent weeks. And hopefully, you and the Jacksonville Jaguars can continue to do great things. Coming up on Monday, NFL fans, Kevin Ostreicher is going to be back to recap the weekend's action and get you ready with a final look at Monday Night Football. Don't forget, Locked On NFL will be live 2 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On channel on Friday to give you one last look at this weekend's slate of NFL action. For Tony Wiggins, I'm David Harrison. Find both of us on Twitter at ShopTalkingWig. That's 2 G's, and at DHarrison82. As always, thank you so much for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day, every day, and every day. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Thank you so much for making us part of your day, part of your football routine. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind. We'll both see you next time for another episode of Locked On NFL Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.